If you enjoy this content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me and helps me keep writing new stories for you. Thank you for your support. My name is Pelopidas, and this is my story. The story of how we, 7 brothers in spirit, restored freedom to our beloved Thebes. Later, it was impossible to determine which of the guests had spoken those fatal words. Bring in the dancers. But it was precisely those words that disturbed the master of the house and marked the beginning of the end for the tyrant Archin. Archin raised his swollen eyelids and slapped his knee in annoyance. Of course, dancers. How did he not think of this before? He thought. A banquet without dancers is like an egg without salt. So said the Athenian Androcles. Archin often stayed with him. When was that? About 25 years ago. Then Archin was not yet polemarch. Secretly from his father, he visited Athens, a city full of all kinds of temptations. He lived with Androcles. That wealthy man has long since departed from the living. The Athenian mob condemned him to death because he was an enemy of democracy and a friend of the Spartans. Archin hated the Athenian mob to the depths of his soul. And since it restored its democracy, worse than which there is none in the world, he had not visited Athens. What good do they see in that city? There you cannot kill an insolent slave in the street. Suddenly it turns out he is free? Try to tell them apart when they walk in the same rags. Noble people have no power there, and everything is run by unscrupulous demagogues. But dancers, there are none better anywhere. Archin would have sent for them immediately, but the weather was bad. Now the passes of Cithaeron are covered with snow, and no guide will go through them, even if you promise him a bag of gold. Strepsiad's wife dances beautifully, said one of the guests dreamily. She's an Athenian and beautiful, as Aphrodite herself. Another picked up. Archin stared at his interlocutors. He remembered that Strepsiad had lived in Athens and brought his wife from there. Perhaps she really had been a dancer. Hey, slaves, croaked Archin. Bring her here. Only a drunk could have had such a mad idea. The guests should have shaken their host, or put a bowl of cold water before him to wash his face. Instead, they roared, Bring her here! Here! Let her dance! 2 years had passed since Archin, with the help of the Spartans, had defeated the Democrats, and having driven many of them beyond the borders of Boeotia, tyrannically ruled Thebes. His word was law. Therefore, the guests did not doubt that this order of Archin's would also be carried out. And suddenly the doors opened. A warrior who guarded the entrance to the house entered the banquet hall. He whispered something in the master's ear. A slave? What slave? Exclaimed Archin, bulging his eyes. He just arrived from Athens and wants to see you because he has urgent business. Archin clapped his hands and turned to his guests, as if expecting their sympathy. Even at night they give you no peace, and everyone has urgent business. Whether you sleep or feast, they don't care. Get up, decide, and for this they call you a tyrant. Throw him out by the neck, this slave. The polemarch finished, energetically. Today is my holiday. I receive no one except close friends and dancers. Understood? Maybe we should invite her husband too? One of the guests suggested hesitantly when the warrior left. Why a husband? Said Archin, swaying. So she won't be bored. The polemarch shook his head. No need for a husband. He can't dance. Let's invite other women. Charon also has a young wife, and he himself fled to Athens, the dog. And Neocles also fled, but his woman remained here, recalled one of the oligarchs. Again the doors opened, and the warrior entered. The slave from Athens wrote you a few words here, he said, extending a piece of papyrus. Didn't you understand that today I don't deal with business? Said Archin. Put it on my table, until tomorrow. Shrugging his shoulders, the warrior carried out the polemarch's order. And now, said Archin, hiccuping, bring here the wives of Strepsiad, Pherenix, and Androclides. What are you still standing there for? Didn't understand again? Let the women come here. I want them to dance before this table. Yes, yes, let them dance. The guests picked up. There were 7 of us in high-girdled cloaks, with hoods with nets and javelins in our hands. At noon we left Athens, and as the sun was setting, we passed through Phrygia, heading towards Cithaeron. Everyone considered us hunters. On the oak-grown slopes of Cithaeron lived wild boars, and in ancient legends they told of the deer of Cithaeron. I walked first, lost in thought, bowing my large head with closely cropped hair low. Behind me walked Melon, already middle-aged, with a large nose on a tanned face, then the fair-haired and bright-eyed twins Mnassippus and Desmos. Behind them the broad-shouldered handsome Pharynix, young Damoclides, thin as a pole, Androclides, 7 of us, and all as one. We were all Thebans who had shared the bread of exiles together in Athens. Already behind us were the last houses of the village through which we had passed to the barking of dogs. The road, following the curves of a mountain river, had turned into a narrow path. On it, even 2 mules could not pass each other. From Cithaeron the north wind blew fiercely. Not without reason had the sky been covered with leaden clouds since morning. In such weather, hunters hide in some cave and light a fire. But we walked and walked. Sand crunched under our feet. The wind tore off our cloaks and flapped them like sails. Suddenly, I stopped and threw the net off my shoulder. The others did the same after me. "What weather?" said Androclides, looking anxiously at the enormous mountain that merged with the blackness of the sky. "The gods sent it to us for our cause," Melon responded. "This is the first test," I said. "If night brings us luck, there will be other campaigns too. We will have to go many days and nights without rest, until the women of Sparta see smoke from our fires." "So that's what you dream of," said Pharynix. "It's enough for us to drive the Spartans from Cadmeia." "No, that's not enough for us," I said firmly. "Until we destroy the serpent's nest, Hellas will know no peace and happiness." And we set off again on the road toward the icy wind and darkness. If someone could have looked at my face, they would have read anxiety and worry on it. Perhaps I fear that I won't find the road through the pass in the darkness, or do the future clashes with the Spartans, who are considered invincible warriors, frighten me. No, I remembered the eighth. The eighth was Clytius, son of Theocles. Clytius, like we 7, was an exile, and together with everyone, had sworn an oath to liberate Thebes from the oligarchs, those worthless accomplices of the Spartans. He was initiated into all our plans and knew about the time of the uprising, but he did not appear at the appointed place. Melon, whom I had entrusted to find Clytius, did not find him at home. He also did not find Clytius's slave, Cyrus. Perhaps Clytius had become the victim of a hired killer? But where had the slave disappeared? Or had he killed his master and fled, as Athenian slaves sometimes do? I was lost in conjectures, but could not even suppose that Clytius had been frightened. A coward would not have left Thebes, would not have gone into exile. He would have submitted to the oligarchs. The wind, squeezed between the rocks, had gained the force of a mountain torrent. It could have knocked even a bull into the abyss. We 7 walked, from time to time pressing against the rocks, waiting for the next gust of wind to die down. The darkness that surrounded us moved and swirled. Perhaps evil spirits had escaped from the caves of Cithaeron, or Artemis, angry that mortals had entered her realm, was throwing her whistling arrows at us. Somewhere here Actaeon had seen her, and the goddess had transformed the hunter into a deer. His own dogs had torn the poor fellow apart. "Friends. Friends." Suddenly came the voice of Damoclides. "Do you hear? Someone is groaning there." Everyone stopped and listened. "Let's go," said Melon. "It's the wind, howling in the chalky rocks. Let's go. We need to arrive by dawn." "No, I hear someone groaning," I exclaimed. "It's a person, somewhere, very close, here, below. Give me the end of the rope." "I'll go down." "Don't do it, Pelopidas," said Androclides. "You'll perish, and without you we won't find the way to Thebes." "Give me the rope, quickly. There's a person there. He needs help," I replied excitedly. And they gave me the end of the rope. Mnassippus and Desmos took hold of the other end. The rope rubbed against the sharp stones, but in a moment, it slackened. Obviously, I had descended to a level platform. I found him. I called from below. He fell from the path. At that moment, the moon appeared through a gap in the clouds. I below cried out as if burned. "What's wrong with you, Pelopidas? Tell us." Before my eyes lay someone familiar. "Where are you, Pelopidas? Answer." "I'll tie him up. Pull the rope. Just carefully." They finally heard my voice. "Grab when I shout one." One, Mazepus, Desmos, and Pharonix, who had come to help them, began to pull up the victim. "Carefully. There are sharp stones here," I shouted to them from below. I myself was climbing up next to the man tied to the rope, supporting his body.
"Wait,"
I called. "Now I'll climb up myself, then we'll pull him up." I pulled myself up and threw my body onto the path. I was breathing heavily. "Pull," I said, grabbing the rope to help my friends. The man's head appeared at the edge of the precipice. His eyes were closed. His lips were twisted in a painful grimace. "Clytias!" Nasipus and Desmos exclaimed together. Yes, it was Clytias, but how had he ended up here? Why hadn't he appeared at the appointed place? Why had he decided to go to Thebes alone, without waiting for his comrades? "My mother is sick," Clytias said quickly, as if he feared these questions. "Yesterday, I had a bad dream. I saw her on a horse, and a horse means death." "Why didn't you warn us?" I asked sternly. "Because of you, we were delayed." "How could I not warn you?" exclaimed Clytias, opening his eyes. "I sent my slave Cyrus to you." "You revealed our plans to a slave," Melon said threateningly. "Your slave didn't come to us," I said. "He was a faithful slave," said Clytias. "He grew up in my father's house." "True. In recent months, I fed him poorly. I had no money." "Are you saying he ran away?" Pharonix said incredulously. "Where would he run at this time of year?" Melon responded. "Friends," I said decisively. "We have no time to argue about where Clytius' slave went. They're waiting for us in Thebes, and we cannot leave Clytius here alone." "We cannot," Melon confirmed. "The cold is getting worse. Clytius will freeze." "Yes, yes," voices rang out. "We won't abandon him in trouble." "Put your arms around my neck, Clytius," I said. "I'll carry you on my back. And when you get tired, I'll carry Clytius." Melon picked up. "And we will too," Nasipus and Desmos said in unison, and we set off on the road. Despite the cold, streams of sweat flowed down my face and hands. Clytius's hands pressed on my throat. It was hard to breathe. With what joy I would have thrown this burden off my back and straightened my stiffened shoulders. But I knew that Clytius had to be saved, even if he had broken his oath and not appeared. He had done it out of love for his mother. I was ready to understand him. I had lost my mother when I was not yet 12 years old, but even now, when I remembered her, pain gripped my heart, and I could barely restrain the cry that burst from somewhere inside. Then Melon carried Clytius. Clytius began to groan. Perhaps it was unbearably painful now, or perhaps he suffered because he felt himself a burden to his comrades. "Be patient, Clytius," Melon whispered. "At dawn we'll be in Thebes, and a doctor will look at you. Probably you have a broken leg. That's not terrible." But Clytius did not fall silent. His cries merged with the howling of the wind, and the wind was getting stronger. Wet snow began to fall. It hit people in the face, blinded them. "Just don't stop. Just don't stop!" Melon thought. "If you stop, there won't be strength to go further." On the snow-covered pass, Nasipus took the living burden. The descent began. In winter, Cithaeron held back the warm southern winds. Only the thought that we were on the land of our native Boeotia warmed us. A few more hours, and we would be in the city of Cadmeia. Armed comrades were waiting for us there. This night would decide the fate of our fatherland, and perhaps of all Hellas. Desmos replaced Menasipus. Then Pharonix, Damocles, and Androcles carried Cletus. It was my turn again. "Hold me tighter, Clytius," I said. "Soon your suffering will end." "Put me down on the ground, Pelopidas," Clytius said dully. "Be patient, friend. There's not much left." "No, I want to say something. Put me down." I stopped and carefully lowered Clytius to the ground. The others also stopped. "I deceived you," said Clytius. "I didn't dream of a horse. I dreamed of the gold that Archin promised. I spent 2 years in poverty. I could wait no longer. Cyrus and I set out at dawn, but the gods were against me. I stumbled and fell from the path. The vile slave could have saved me, but he decided that if he appeared in Thebes, the pole march would give him freedom. The slave abandoned me and went to Thebes himself. Don't go further. An ambush awaits you there. Cyrus got ahead of you. He carried nothing." For a moment we were silent, shocked by what we had heard. Melon drew his knife and raised it over the traitor, but I deflected his hand. "Death is too light a punishment for him," I said. "Let the people decide his fate." We 7 sat in a circle, turning our backs to the wind. The 8th lay nearby, groaning with shame and pain. We had to decide what to do next. Return when there was no more than an hour's walk to Thebes, stay here until dawn, or go forward. "Friends," I said, "for 2 years we have prepared for battle with enemies. For 2 years we have awaited this day. Can we retreat when we are so close to our goal?" "You are right, Pelopidas," said Melon. "We must go, but before the city we will send 2 men on reconnaissance. I am no longer young, but I will go first." "And I will go with you," cried Phalanx, and we set off again, taking turns carrying Clytius. 2 of our comrades, Melon and Phalanx, crept into the city and returned with good news. The guards at the gates were sleeping, and those who weren't asleep were drunk. Silence reigned around Cadmeia. Only from the pole march house came the sounds of music and drunken voices. "Let's go," I said. "Archin is celebrating and doesn't expect guests." We 7 took Clytius and headed for the city. The snow had stopped, but the frost was intensifying. Our cloaks were covered with hoarfrost. There wasn't a living soul on the streets. Only here and there flickered lights in windows, and even those quickly went out. The first thing we had to do was free our comrades who were being held under guard in various houses throughout the city. I knew where Philon, Chion, and our other friends lived. Their wives had remained in Thebes while their husbands were in exile. "Let's split into 3 groups," I whispered. "Melon, take Androcles and go to Philon's house. Mnassippus and Desmos to Chion's, and I'll go with Phalanx and Damoclides to get Lycidas." We agreed to meet in the square before Apollo's temple when the sky turned gray with dawn. Lycidas' house stood in the shadow of a great plane tree, its branches hanging down to the very roof. We crept right up to it. There was no light in the windows. Only one guard dozed by the door, leaning on his spear. "Damoclides," I whispered. "Go around the house from behind. When you hear my whistle, act." Phalanx nodded to me, and we crawled along the ground like wolves stalking a flock. The guard was snoring. His helmet had slipped over his eyes. I carefully took the spear from his hands and pressed the point to his throat. The man woke up and wanted to cry out, but understood that this might be the last sound of his life. "Where is Lycidas?" I whispered. "With 2 barbarians." Phalanx tied his hands and stuffed his mouth with a piece of cloth. We found the entrance to the basement. From there came a weak whistling. Lycidas was playing the flute, to keep from going mad with loneliness. 2 Spartan warriors sat at a table playing dice. They didn't hear our steps on the stone stairs when I appeared in the basement doorway with raised sword. One of them reached for his weapon, but Phalanx had already jumped on him from behind. The fight was brief. The Spartans fought desperately, but surprise was on our side. In a minute both lay bound. "Pelopidas," Lycidas exclaimed joyfully when I cut the ropes on his hands. "I knew you would come. But how did you get here?" "Cadmeia is surrounded by Spartans." "I'll tell you later," I replied. "Now we need to save the others." Lycidas quickly put on his armor and took his sword. The three of us got out of the basement and headed for the meeting place. In the square, Melon with Androclades and the freed Philon were already waiting for us. Philon was thin and pale, but his eyes burned with fierce fire of revenge. "Where are Mnassippus and Desmos?" I asked worriedly. "They haven't returned yet," Melon replied. "Maybe they had to fight." We waited until the sky began to turn gray in the east. Finally, the twins appeared, but they were alone. "Chion was killed 3 days ago," Mnassippus reported. "His wife said he tried to escape, and the Spartans speared him right at the gates." Bitterness filled my chest. But we couldn't stop. "Friends," I said. "Now there are 10 of us. That's enough to begin the struggle. Remember our plan? We need to capture Cadmeia before dawn, while the garrison sleeps." Philon cleared his throat. "Pelopidas, I have a better proposal. Why don't we start with Archin? If we kill the pole march, the Spartans will lose their commander." "Yes," Lycidas picked up. "Archin is drunk and defenseless now. This is our chance." I shook my head. "No. If we kill him now, the Spartans will realize that a revolt has begun and will rouse the entire garrison. Then we won't be able to handle them." "So what do you propose?" Androclades asked. "First Cadmeia. The weapons for the people are stored there, and let Archin celebrate for now." Cadmeia, the ancient Theban citadel, rose above the city like a gigantic cliff. Its walls were so strong they could withstand the siege of an entire army, but we knew the secret passages that we had used as children playing war. I led my comrades along a narrow path that led to the north wall. Here, where the wall joined the cliff, there was a small gap, so narrow that a man could barely squeeze through it. "Who goes first?" Lycidas whispered. "I will," I replied without hesitation. I took off my armor and squeezed through the crack. After me came Pharynix, then the others. We found ourselves in the inner courtyard of the citadel. It was quiet here. Only from the barracks came the snoring of Spartans. "Damoclides and Androclides," I whispered. "Go to the armory. Melon and the twins are the exit. Philon, Pharynix, Lycidas, and I will take the guards." This seemed strange. Usually the garrison was 3 times larger, but I had no time to ponder. We had to act quickly and decisively. The first guard fell to my dagger without even managing to cry out. The second saw me and began reaching for his horn to sound the alarm. But Pharynix cut his throat. Voices began to sound from the barracks. The Spartans were waking up. "Take weapons." Damoclides and Androclides brought swords, spears, shields from the armory. We quickly armed ourselves. Spartans ran out of the barracks. They were half awakened, some half drunk, but even in such a state they remained dangerous enemies. "For Thebes!" I cried and rushed forward. A fierce battle began. The Spartans fought desperately, understanding that their fate depended on this fight. But we had been preparing for this battle for 2 years. Each of us knew his business. Philon, who was the best archer among us, climbed onto the wall and from there shot at the enemies. His arrows always hit their mark. Melon and the twins held defense at the exit so that none of the Spartans could escape and sound the alarm in the city. I fought with their commander, a tall warrior with a black beard. He was stronger than me, but I was faster. When his sword came down on my head, I jumped aside, and the blade only touched my helmet. My answering blow got him in the side under his arm. The Spartan staggered, but didn't fall. He tried to deliver a thrusting blow to me, but I caught his wrist and turned the blade against himself. The sword went into his chest between the plates of his armor. "The end." He croaked and fell. The battle didn't last long. In half an hour all the Spartans lay dead. We lost only one. Damoclides was wounded in the shoulder, but it wasn't fatal. "Cadmeia is ours," Lycidas exclaimed. "This is only the beginning," I replied. "We need to capture all the city gates before the other Spartans learn what happened." From Cadmeia, Archin's house was clearly visible. Music still sounded from there. The pole march continued to feast, not knowing that his fate was already decided. "Phelon," I said, "take 3 of the best archers and occupy the tower. All roads will be visible from there. If you see anyone running to the Spartan camp, shoot." "I obey," he replied. "Melon, take Androclides and Mnassippus and go to the eastern gates. There should be only 2 guards there. Take them alive and close the gates." "What about Archin?" Lycidas asked. I thought, the pole march still didn't know about our return. This gave us an advantage. But how long could we keep it? "We need to take him alive," I finally said. "He might be useful for negotiations with the Spartans." "Are you planning to negotiate with them?" Pharynix was surprised. "Perhaps. If they agree to leave Boeotia without a fight. Why not? This will save the lives of many Thebans." Lycidas grimaced. "Spartans don't give in to negotiations. They fight to the end." "We'll see," I replied. "But first we need to capture Archin." I left 5 warriors in Cadmeia under Desmos's command, and went with the rest to the pole march's house. Archin's house stood in the center of the city, surrounded by a garden. Now this garden was covered with snow, and the bare branches of trees creaked in the wind. We crept up to the fence. Drunken voices and the sound of aloes came from the house. Someone was singing a war song. But the voice kept breaking. "How many are there?" Pharynix whispered. "No more than 10 guests," I replied, "plus Archin and a few slaves. And the guard? 2 warriors at the entrance, 2 more in the garden." I gave orders. Lycidas and Androclides were to capture the guards in the garden. Pharynix, those at the entrance. I would penetrate the house through the back doors. Everything went according to plan. The guards didn't expect an attack and surrendered without resistance. In a minute we were in the house. In the great hall, 8 men sat at the table. Archin was in the center, with a wreath of ivy on his head. His face was red from wine and fatigue. 3 women danced by the table. I recognized among them Strepsiad's wife, a young beauty with large dark eyes. She moved gracefully, but humiliation could be read on her face. When we burst into the hall with raised swords, the music stopped. One of the guests tried to jump up but fell, too drunk to stand on his feet. "Don't move," I ordered. "Anyone who tries to escape will die." Archin stared at me with drunken eyes. Who are you? How did you get here?" "I am Pelopidas, son of Hippocles. I've returned home to free my native city from tyrants." The pole march tried to get up, but his legs wouldn't hold him. "Pelopidas? But you're in Athens." "I was, and now I'm here. And you, Archin, are my prisoner." Strepsiad's wife ran up to me. "Master, save us. He brought us here by force." "Go home. You are free." The women quickly left the hall, and I approached Archin. "Where are your Spartan friends?" The pole march tried to concentrate. "What friends?" "Cleombrotus and his warriors." "Where are they?" They went to Tanagra. "There's some revolt there." I understood. That's why there were so few Spartans in Cadmeia. The main forces had gone to suppress a rebellion in another city. "When will they return?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe more." "Pharynix," I said, "take him to Cadmeia. Let him sober up in the dungeon." While my warriors tied up Archin, I turned to his guests. "Listen to me carefully. I give you one chance to save your lives. Pack your things and leave the city forever. Whoever remains will die as soon as dawn breaks." The oligarchs, trembling with fear, nodded their heads. They understood that their rule was over. By dawn we had captured all the gates of the city. The Spartan garrison was destroyed. Archin sat in the dungeon. His accomplices had fled. When the first rays of sun touched the peaks of the mountains, I climbed the wall of Cadmeia and looked at my native city. Thebes was free again, but I knew this was only the beginning of a great war. Sparta would not leave this without response. Soon an entire army would come here. "Pelopidas," Melon approached me. "The people are gathering in the square. They want to see you." I nodded. It was time to return their rights to the people. When we descended from Cadmeia, a large crowd had already gathered in the square before Apollo's temple. Men, women, children, all looked at us with hope and fear. "Thebans," I cried, climbing the steps of the temple. "Tyranny is over. Thebes is free again." The crowd exploded in joyful exclamations. People wept, embraced, blessed the gods. "But," I continued, raising my hand, "this is only victory in one battle. Ahead lies a great war. Sparta will send armies against us. We must be ready to defend our freedom." An old man came out of the crowd. I recognized him as Epaminondas the Elder, father of my childhood friend, Pelopidas. He said solemnly, "The people trust you. Lead us in this war." "No," I replied. "I am a warrior, not a ruler. Choose archons for yourselves according to the old laws. Then be our general," someone from the crowd said. I looked at the faces of the people. In their eyes I saw hope and faith. They needed a strong leader. "Very well. I will accept command. But you must know, hard times lie ahead. Spartans don't forgive defeats." "We are ready," voices from the crowd replied. "Better death than slavery." 3 days passed in preparations for the siege. We knew that the Spartans would inevitably return, and the city had to be prepared for defense. I personally rode around all the fortifications. The walls were strong, but in places they needed repair. Phelon directed the work of restoring the destroyed sections, while Milon organized the arming of volunteers. On the 4th day, the first Spartan scouts appeared on the horizon. They circled around the city like hawks seeking prey. Pelopidas. Lycidas approached me as I stood on the tower, watching the enemy sentries. "The people are worried. They say the Spartan army is numerous as sea waves." "Let them worry," I replied. "Fear is natural, but when the Spartans come, fear will turn to fury, and an angry Theban is worth 10 Spartans. Lycidas smiled. "You always knew how to encourage comrades. Remember how we fought as children with the boys from Orchomenus? You said the same thing then." "And we defeated them," I reminded him. "We'll win now, too." On the 5th day, an entire army approached the walls of Thebes. King Cleombrotus brought with him 3,000 Spartan warriors, and as many allies. The red cloaks of the warriors in the sun looked like a sea of blood. Cleombrotus made camp within arrow's distance of the city walls. In the evening, a herald came to the gates under a white flag. "Citizens of Thebes," he shouted, "King Cleombrotus offers you to surrender without battle. Hand over the rebels, and your city will be spared." I climbed onto the wall and replied, "Tell your king, Thebans do not betray their friends and do not bow to tyrants. If he wants us, let him try to take us by force." The herald shook his head and returned to the camp. "So there will be a siege," Melon said. "There will be," I agreed, "but we are ready." The siege lasted 2 weeks. The Spartans tried to take the city by storm 3 times, but each time they retreated with heavy losses. Our archers, led by Phelon, dealt devastating blows to the enemy, but the hardest part was not on the walls, but in the city. Food was running out. People were starving. Children cried from hunger. Pelopidas, one of the city's elders, came to me. "The people ask you, perhaps it's better to surrender? The Spartans promise mercy to ordinary citizens. Do you believe their promises?" I asked. "I don't know. Children are dying of hunger." I was silent for a long time. Then I said, "Give me 2 more days. If the situation doesn't change by then, we'll talk about surrender." The elder nodded and left. That night Androcles came to me. "Pelopidas, I have news. A traveler from the south made his way into the city. He says the Athenians have gathered an army and are coming to our aid." My heart beat faster. "Really? When will they be here?" Androcles replied, "Maybe 3. The army is led by Chabrias." Chabrias. This was truly wonderful news. He was one of the best Athenian generals. Just keep this secret, I warned. If the Spartans find out, they might try to take the city with one decisive assault. On the 18th day of the siege, what I feared most happened. Reinforcements arrived at the Spartan camp. Another 2,000 warriors. Cleombrotus decided to attack with all forces at once. At dawn, 5,000 Spartans and their allies moved to assault. Everyone to the walls, I ordered. Today the fate of Thebes is decided. The battle was fierce. The Spartans rolled a battering ram to the walls and began breaking down the gates. Others climbed assault ladders. Phelon with archers shot at enemies from the walls. Melon and the twins defended the main tower, and I with Lycidas, Pharynix, and Damoclides repelled attacks at the gates. The battle lasted all day. By evening the Spartans retreated, but with great losses for us. Young Damoclides died. An arrow struck him in the throat. Pharynix was seriously wounded. We won't hold out much longer, Melon said, bandaging a wound on his arm. We must hold out, I replied. The Athenians are close. On the 19th day of the siege, when the Spartans were preparing for a new assault, a cloud of dust appeared on the northern horizon. Look, shouted someone from the warriors on the wall. I raised my hand, shielding myself from the sun, and saw them. Athenian hoplites in gleaming armor were moving directly toward the Spartan camp. Chabrias, I exclaimed. The Athenians have come! Joyful exclamations rang out along the entire wall. People wept with happiness and relief. The Spartans also saw the Athenian army. Commotion began in their camp. Cleombrotus quickly regrouped his troops, turning their front toward the Athenians. Now is our time, I shouted. Open the gates! Attack! With joyful cries, the Thebans flew out of the city. We attacked the Spartans from behind, while the Athenians advanced from the front. The battle was short but decisive. Caught between two armies, the Spartans could not offer long resistance. By noon, Cleombrotus gave the order to retreat. Victory! The Thebans shouted. The Spartans are fleeing! When the enemy left, I met with Chabrias. The Athenian strategos was a middle-aged man with intelligent gray eyes and a gray beard. Pelopidas, he said, firmly shaking my hand. Athens is proud of what you have done. You have shown all of Hellas that Spartans can be defeated. This was not done by us alone, I replied. Without your help, Thebes would have fallen. But the initiative was yours, and now Sparta knows its power is not limitless. We talked long about the future. Chabrias proposed creating an alliance between Thebes and Athens against Sparta. Hellas suffocates under the Spartan yoke, he said. The time has come to throw it off. I agreed. This was an opportunity not only to protect Thebes, but to free all of Hellas. A week after the Spartan retreat, another of our comrades returned to Thebes, Epaminondas. He had traveled long, studying military art in distant lands. When I saw him, my heart filled with joy. Epaminondas was my closest friend from childhood. Tall, broad-shouldered, with an intelligent gaze of dark eyes. He had always stood apart from others. Pelopidas, he embraced me. I heard about your exploits back in Athens. All of Hellas speaks of the 7 heroes who freed Thebes, and I was waiting for your return, I said. Now we are together again, as in childhood. Yes, he smiled, and we have great work ahead of us. Epaminondas was right. The liberation of Thebes was only the first step. Ahead was the struggle for the freedom of all Boeotia, and then for the fate of Hellas. A year later, when I stood on that same wall of Cadmeia and looked at my native city, I remembered that winter night when we 7 walked through the snowy slopes of Cithaeron. Then it seemed we were walking toward death, but it turned out we were walking toward destiny. A destiny that changed not only our lives, but the history of Hellas. Of the 7 original participants in the campaign, 5 remained. Damoclides died during the siege. Clytius, the traitor, was sentenced by the popular assembly to exile. But instead of them, new comrades joined us. Epaminondas, Chabrias, dozens of other brave men. The Boeotian League, created after our victory, became a force that even mighty Sparta had to reckon with. and the Theban army, which we began to form, would soon become the strongest in Hellas. But most importantly, we proved that freedom can be won back, that a few determined people can change the world if they have faith in justice and readiness to sacrifice their lives to achieve it. That night, when it all began, we were 7 against an entire city captured by enemies. It would seem, what pitiful force, but we had something our enemies did not have: love for the fatherland and unshakable faith in victory. And we won. Thebes was free. Spartan hegemony was shaken. Throughout Hellas, peoples raised their heads, feeling that a new time was coming, a time of freedom and justice. And I, Pelopidas, son of Hippocles, one of those 7 who began this great cause, stood on the wall of my native city and looked into the future that we had won with our swords and our own blood, the future of free Hellas. Asterisk, asterisk. The end, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Author's note. This story is based on real events of 379 BCE, when Theban patriots led by Pelopidas and Epaminondas freed their city from Spartan occupation. This became the beginning of the end of Spartan hegemony in Hellas and the birth of a new power, the Theban League, which would soon defeat the Spartans in the decisive battle at Leuctra. Asterisk,